part to ng getting to know you natin with our learners this afternoon. Sino dito yung first time nila na makakasama sa free webinars ng Positive Workplaces? Ayan, si Jerilyn nag-raise ng hand. Si Nadine din. Hello, welcome. Si
April din, si Mariel, si Edrelyn, and si Aliza. So, ayan, welcome.
Si Edrelyn nga, parang nasa isang room sila. Nakikita mo ba yun?
Oh!
Ayan, hello po dun sa mga nasa camera ni Edrelyn. Good afternoon. So they're from Ferrotech. Hello. Ayan, welcome. And again, kung meron pa kayong mga friends and colleagues who would like to join us this afternoon, our Zoom room still has space. Or if ever hindi kaya ng bandwidth or mas kailangan or mas gusto nyo to tune in on YouTube, we are also streaming this live on YouTube. And don't worry, if ever you need to review any of the concepts or any of the parts of this webinar this afternoon, you can also rewatch them kasi we also post these live recordings on YouTube. Yeah. Sige, you may put down your hands na. Sina Mayela din, first time nila. Imelda is from LGU Provincial Government of Cavite. Ang dami nating learners from Cavite this afternoon. Meron din tayo si Maria Cherise from the National Museum of the Philippines. Good afternoon po. Si Mary Jane din, first time to attend. Yung last time sa YouTube niya napanood. Yung kay How to Deal with Toxic Bosses with Sir Louis Banta. So welcome again, Miss Mary Jane. We have joiners from, meron din tayong mga from hospital. So we have frontliners and healthcare workers joining with us. From different organizations talaga. And Joyce, I think it's a testament no na yung i-discuss natin this afternoon is something very important in the workplace across different types of workplaces. So,
yes, that's
yeah. So let's give our learners another minute. Sabihin nyo, pwede pa silang mag-join and we'll officially start at 3:02. Meanwhile, yung mga nasa loob ng meeting room, you can introduce yourselves. We'd love to know you more. And we'd love to know where you're calling from this afternoon. Si Mary Joyce din daw, first time niya from Tarlac. Si Marjorie is from Always With You Foundation. Wow!
Nung name ng foundation. Always With You.
Kasama niya rin si Clarice. Uy, maybe you can share with us ano yung ginagawa ng organization nyo in the chat box. Very interesting. We also have learners from the Lung Center of the Philippines. Hi, Jem. Si Angela din. Oh my God. Joyce, alam mo ba si Angela? She's one of my juniors in college back in La Union. Hi, Angela. Meron din si Genevieve from Cebu. We also have Jessie from DSWD Iloilo City. Ayan, I think we can now start our...
Ng bawat pamilya ay may...
Yan, Joyce, again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, the first of the webinar series this March. And this afternoon, we're going to talk about communicating to connect, practicing nonviolent communication. So again, for those of you who are new here, and again na lang siya para dun sa mga constant attendees namin, we are positive workplaces. And our mission is that we co-create cultures that enhance the well-being of the Filipino workforce. And we believe that these positive cultures are made possible through the positivity ripples, and it all starts with you. Kaya we'd like to thank each and every one of you for investing your time this afternoon and your attention para mapalawak pa natin yung kaalaman natin about leadership, about taking care of our well-being. Kasi we believe talagang nagsisimula sa bawat isa sa atin. And once we are able to apply yung mga matututunan natin this afternoon, we are able to lead others. And we are also able to lead cultures, and that creates positive workplaces. So this March, we are going to talk about toxic positivity in the Filipino workplace, and we have an interesting lineup of topics. Diba? So this afternoon, we have Chewy, and we are talking about communicate to connect, practicing nonviolent communication. And then next week, we're gonna talk about hanggang kailan ka magtitiis, acknowledging pain and growing from it. And on March 29, we have Liam Borlagdan, and she's going to talk about Filipino hope, be power, and why power. So if you want to know how to build more hope in these trying times, I'm pretty sure you are really going to learn a lot on that webinar. Ayan. So just a few reminders because we really want to give all the time dun sa speaker natin this afternoon. So we hope you have another device or be ready to go to another link. So if you're using your computers, make sure na you can open another tab so you can join us over Menti and Pigeonhole. And just prepare your pen and paper if there are any activities or if there are any things you would like to note. And of course, we highly encourage engagement with the audience, but of course, be respectful in the chat box. Okay? So nakikita naman namin na each and everyone is being respectful, and we really want to create that safe space for you to learn this afternoon. And Joyce, para naman sa mga evaluation forms natin.
Ayan. So, our evaluation forms po will be issued at the end of the webinar for those in the Zoom room only. So, yung mga nasa YouTube, hindi po kayo makakatanggap ng evaluation form. And please remember 10. So, 10 stands for title. Check niyo po yung title later kung tama yung eval forms na ibibigay namin. So, that's communicate to connect. And then, yung email, write niyo po yung email na ginagamit niyo and yung active, and make sure na tama po yung email kasi doon po ipapasa nung system yung certificates niyo. And also write your full name kasi hindi na po siya ma-edit once na nakalagay na siya sa certificate. Ayan. For any concerns about evaluations or certificates, you may email us at engage@positiveworkplaces.org, and we will only be entertaining inquiries regarding evaluations and certificates up to 1 week after the event. So, 7 business days po yan. And also, yung certificates niyo po, please wait for like 2 to 4 hours bago niyo siya ma-receive kasi minsan sa stock po siya dahil marami po tayong attendees sa Zoom. Ayan,
Yes.
Gabby.
Oo nga. So now that we know how we will interact during this event and ano yung mga kailangan natin to get our certificate, I think we are all ready to move forward to our topic this afternoon, which is communicate to connect, practicing nonviolent communication. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you one of our consultants, Chewy. Chewy is a well-being coach and positive psychology practitioner. He is also the co-founder of What Really Matters, which aims to create spaces for connection, authenticity, and discovery. He is an ICF credentialed life coach who creates safe spaces where people can develop their courage, self-compassion, and well-being. He integrates practices from positive psychology and cognitive behavioral coaching to create conversations filled with empathy, holistic growth, and sustainable lifestyle changes. Currently, Chewy is a co-founder of an organization called What Really Matters, which aims to create spaces for connection, authenticity, and discovery. And outside of work, Chewy is a part-time master's student taking up counseling psychology and a certified applied positive psychology practitioner. Lastly, he is an avid fan of Gallup's StrengthsFinder, theater, and jazz music. So everyone, please help us welcome with a warm virtual round of applause our resource speaker this afternoon, Matthew Chewy C.
Hi everyone. Natawa sa comment kasi may ano daw po. So, hello, introduction to the resource speaker today. So, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, and it's called nonviolent communication. I think perfect din to, no, to start off the rounds of conversations around toxic positivity, because may pressure din talaga dito, no, in the Philippines, where we have to feel only the good emotions, or we have to see what's the positive in a certain event. But with emotions, as we all know, or as we'll come to know, both spectrums, or all spectrums of emotions, are welcome and have to be felt. If not, they will eventually come out somewhere, somehow. So today I'm going to be talking to you about, the title of my workshop is called Communicate to Connect, and it's all about the practice of nonviolent communication. So just to introduce, as mentioned, I'm a co-founder of an organization called What Really Matters, and at the heart of it is we want to create space for people to feel connected. How ironic, no, that we have more ways to connect, yet if we look at the data, or even if you ask yourself how often do you really feel like you have quality connections with other people, maybe then we can really see our question, no, where can we meet more people, where at the same time we have more moments of where we can really just be ourselves. And that's ultimately what Really Matters wants to do. So as mentioned, I won't go through this anymore. There was an extensive introduction into who I am. And as mentioned, in this workshop, there will be moments for you to participate. So either in the chat, I'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, or at the same time, meron din kaming Mentimeter exercises later. Share your ideas, your thoughts there as well. Okay, so what are we going to be learning about? So first, we're going to be understanding, no, why is communicating our needs important? And then we're going to be moving towards how does communication relate to the principles or what the practice of nonviolent communication is. And last but not the least, no, is now that we understand why it's important, what's the essential framework, how can we apply this in a bite-sized manner for our own personal lives? And if you have any questions, I always welcome questions. So just feel free to type in the chat, and then maybe we can talk about it later. Okay. So with that, once again, the workshop's all about practicing nonviolent communication. So we start with the question here around why is communicating our needs important? Or if we even think about it now, what are needs? Maybe when you hear the word needs, maybe may association sa when I hear the word needs, sometimes what enters into my head is yung saying na ang needy mo or ang dami mong needs. So it's seen, there's this connotation that it's a negative thing to have needs, that it's a negative thing to have wants. But what I want to say is that it's something that's normal, and in our everyday lives, we have different needs that we go through, or that we experience, that we try to fulfill. So with that, I just want a quick exercise, no, around when we think about the idea, why do we communicate? I want to ask people, what are the different reasons on why we communicate with one another? So I have a Mentimeter link here up front. So the QR code, you can either scan through the QR code or yung gamitin natin yung code dito sa PowerPoint slide. So the question once again is, why do we communicate with one another? Kung di kaya, okay lang din to type it in the chat, of course. So I just want to know the different answers of what people think no, around why do we communicate with one another. Okay, to understand one another. Okay, for connection, to express our feelings and to be heard. I love that. For everyone's peacefulness. So it's not just a one-way street, no? Parang two ways siya for communication. To convey a message, exchange ideas, okay. To set clear expectations and boundaries with other people and ourselves. Ang ganda ng answer na yan. Okay, to enhance relationships. I love that. So it's not just to get something across, but what's the point of that understanding, which is to better our relationship with another person. Okay, let me just give it a couple more seconds. To clarify, to be all right. So I think the most popular answer here now is to be understood and then to convey something. And with some answers around here relating to deeper relationships, to establish connections, or to meet at the middle now. So the reason why I asked this question first around why do we communicate is essentially every day when we're talking to one another, there are different ideas or different objectives of why we talk to one another. And I'm not trying to say that there's one singular objective, but there's actually different objectives, no? Depende kung ano yung gusto nating mangyari. For example, if we want a better relationship, maybe the communication there, no, is trying to understand what another person is. Maybe if we're in a business setting, our communication is to express or convey an idea and for the other party to understand kung ano yung sinasabi natin tungkol sa mga plano. But all in all, when we think about communication, number one is there are several things that we could be communicating. No? So it could be our thoughts, our feelings, our needs, our hopes, our wants, our desires, our intent. Could be judgments, din yung mga chismis, or mamarites, no, about talking about different people, no, what we think about different people, what we feel about different people. All these are the different things that we can talk about. But at the end of the day, as a lot of you guys were saying, no, communication is not just about conveying a message. Communication is a way for us to express ourselves for whatever we want to express. And second, the second part of it is to be seen and understood by another person. With this definition, no, that means inherently to be able to communicate, dapat talagang involved yung other person, no? If we're only gonna communicate in one direction, that's more of expression or telling a person something. To communicate, once again, always involves the other person in their understanding or in this connection process. And without these two pieces, we can't necessarily say that, okay, communication is really happening. Which is why it's not only important to understand what we're trying to convey, but it's also important for us to understand, no, on the other person's shoes, how are they receiving something? What are they understanding from what we're saying? Kaya kung i-connect natin sa topic, no, of toxic positivity, although let's sabihin natin na yung intent ng tao to tell you that, okay, just think positive. The intention is good, which is like, I want you to feel better. But what is the impact or what's the understanding received by the other person naman? There might be an understanding or might be a story around, okay, bawal pala yung sad dito. Or bawal pala yung na maramdaman ko yung emotions ko. And when we take this definition into consideration, it's integral in this process that we involve the other person and try to see how something that we conveyed lands with them. And that is kind of the importance of why communication is so essential. and why communication, as when we define it as something that's interconnected or involving two or more people, and seeing it from that perspective. So now if we were to try to talk about the topic of what are the essential principles to nonviolent communication, of course, kailangan muna natin i-define kung ano ba yung nonviolent communication. I would just like people to guess in the chat, no? Pag sinabi nating nonviolent communication, ano ba yung sinasabi natin? Or what do you think it means, no? Just from the name, nonviolent communication. Constructive criticisms, life-giving. Okay, I think she might have read the book. Not being so mean. Respectful and empathetic communication. No shouting, hurting other people's feelings. Calm talking, not hurtful, no aggression involved. Not offensive. Okay, being calm and no shouting. What I see as maybe a theme, no, that's appearing from what people are sharing so far is that there's still a form of communication. There's a form of expression being said, but it's the manner of how it's done and how it's received by the other person that makes it different. Yes, Anna, I see your hand raised up. We can definitely answer the question later. You can type it out in the chat and I'd love to get to you, Anna. Okay, so other people also saying being mindful of what we say, cognizant of the other person. All right. So the first thing that I really want to dispel, no, is when we say nonviolent communication, that it means that it's a timid or a shy way of expressing ourselves, which isn't true. Nonviolent communication, I mean the fact that sinasabi mo talaga kung ano yung nararamdaman mo, ng todo talaga, ng totoo, that's very scary. That takes a lot of vulnerability from anybody's part. So nonviolent communication isn't a timid approach. It's a very courageous and truthful approach. Second, nonviolent communication, meaning it's the manner also of how we present what we're saying that makes the difference to the person that we're talking to. So to finally define or tell you about what nonviolent communication is, it was created by a psychologist in the 1960s named Marshall Rosenberg. So idol ko yan. If you ever ask me the question, no, who would I like to have a dinner date with, like globally, I would answer Marshall Rosenberg. And Marshall was just trying to think about how can we create a way for us to really listen and understand the person genuinely, but at the same time express what is happening to us in a manner that's authentic. Because I'm sure growing up, we're taught that it's either tama ka or mali ako. And with that perspective, no, kung okay, nagalit si mommy or nagalit si dad or nagalit yung friend natin, that means I'm wrong. That means I can't feel the sadness, I can't feel whatever emotion I'm feeling. But in nonviolent communication, the understanding it tries to bring is that whatever we're both feeling is valid, where it's not hindi to black or white that one person has something important to say while the other person shouldn't feel what they're feeling. And overall, nonviolent communication guides us to reframe how we express ourselves, how we hear other people, and how we address the tension or the conflict in between by focusing our consciousness on what we, number one, observe, number two, feel, number three, need, and number four, request. So I'll define those later, no? But what I do want to emphasize here is that it's similar to what we were talking about a while ago, right? Where communication is expression, conveying, at the same time, how it lands with the person. So that's how we hear other people. Ano ba yung naging understanding nila sa sinabi natin? Because for example, I could give a feedback around you submit your work late. Could be a neutral statement that okay, you submitted your work late. But as we know here in the Philippines, no, we tend to be quite sensitive or quite emotional din to what people are saying. So there are so many different ways that people could hear one single sentence of you submitted your work late. And that's why we want to understand how is this other person receiving what we're seeing, what we're saying, and how can we clarify and how can we reach a point of understanding one another. So the first part of this framework, this is the main framework, no, called OFNR: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. Observations. So what are observations? Marshall Rosenberg says that observations are things that we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. So ito yung sinasabi natin, yung 5 senses natin. So observations tendency is or at least what is shared in nonviolent communication is where most conflicts arise are in moments of where we can't distinguish an observation from a judgment. And that's why it's very important here in the description of what an observation is. It's describing whatever we're trying to describe without our interpretations. So interpretations meaning, masama yan. Okay, mabuti yun. Instead, it's just stating what we can see, what we can tell based on our 5 senses. So I want to have a small activity where you see this picture of a dog in front of you. I want people to try giving observations around this dog and type it out in the chat. No, what observations can you say, or ano ba yung kayang natin sabihin tungkol sa dog na to? Okay, so no tail. Okay, the dog is happy. I cannot see the tail. Color brownish or white. Okay. It's a friendly dog. Looks friendly. Brave. Okay. Sige, I will choose a couple of them and then I want all of us to say, is it an observation or is it a judgment? Once again, observations, ginagamit po natin yung 5 senses natin. While as in judgments, may binibigay na tayong kwento, no, tungkol sa ano yung nakita natin based on the 5 senses. So the one that I want to choose as an example here is, okay, the dog is happy. The dog is happy. Is that an observation? Is that a judgment? Okay, so a couple of people saying judgment. Okay. One person saying it's observation. The interesting thing, no, about observations and judgment is it's so close to one another that sometimes we don't get to immediately tell that, okay, may sinasabi na akong interpretation, no, kung ano yung nararamdaman ng dog na to. So for example, it could be so to answer the question, though, the dog is happy, that's a judgment. Meaning we gave a story to what we see. So if I were to ask, no, if the dog is happy is a judgment, ano kaya yung observation na nagbigay ng backup sa atin na kaya nating sabihin na okay, or kaya nating magbigay ng assumption na the dog is happy. So the dog smiles, okay, or the dog's mouth is open. The dog's tongue is out, okay. So those are observations. So once again, why? We're using our sense of sight to see that the dog's mouth is open, and we give a judgment towards the dog is happy. Okay, so I also just want to pick on here another observation. So I saw that someone was saying that the dog has brown and white fur. So once again, that is a correct observation because we use the sense of sight here. If I were to ask about the sense of touch, no, sabihin na natin na may sense of touch tayo. What would be an observation around touch? The dog is furry, okay. The first fluffy, okay, pwede. Let's just say that we were able to touch the dog. Or kung may aso kayo sa bahay, parang touch your dog and then make the observations. Okay, so furry and fluffy, nice. I also like here that some people were typing, no, the dog has no tail. That's a very good usage of the observation, no, of sight or the sense of sight. Okay, so remember this is an essential skill because when we tell or when we talk to other people and we say our judgments, that's where the potential of hurting another person comes from. Versus when we share what our observations are, these are factual. These are things that cannot be denied. Versus where I say na, okay, masyado kang lazy dahil sinabit mo ng na hindi na sa deadline natin yung homework mo. The observation is there. You submitted it past the deadline. The judgment is you're lazy. And if we cannot distinguish between the two, that's when it becomes deadly and dangerous in terms of our interactions or in our communications with one another. So to give some examples, observations are the tongue is the sticking out. The dog has brown fur. The dog has fur, and the dog has black eyes. At least based on this drawing, no. What are some examples of judgments? Might be the dog is tired because the tongue is out. The dog is hungry. The dog wants to rest. As you can see, though, all of these are stories that I made based on looking at the dog. Totoo ba siya? Maybe. Is it also possible that it's not true? That's also possible. Because these are judgments that we're making based on the five senses that we have. So I'm just emphasizing this again and again and again because this is a very difficult skill to master, especially because we're taught to kailangan may critical thinking tayo, kailangan mas mabilis yung yung problem solving skills natin. And tendency with problem solving skills is we jump to conclusions. So that's the first part of the framework on observations. It's being able to distinguish between what is an observation and what is a judgment. So I will give us another chance again. So based on this photo, what are the observations that we can be making here? So once again, it's using the five senses, no? Okay, so the woman is pretty. That's because we give our opinion, no? May kwento na tayo, so that's a judgment. Even in the idea, no, na instructing, we don't necessarily know what's happening, but what we can say at least based on our senses is that okay, the guy is pointing towards the laptop. The girl has messy hair, tama. So, or the girl has rugged hair. The person's wearing a brown jacket. Yes, that is an observation. The man is pointing out his finger to a notebook. Tama. Okay, so maybe it's not the laptop. Maybe this is actually the notebook. The woman's eyebrows slightly raised. Okay. There, the guy is angry. So that is a peak example of when we give a story or interpretation to what's happening. And malay natin, parang masaya pala or passionate pala yung tao na to. Na mukha lang siyang angry without sound, but maybe, who knows? He's actually very passionate or even excited, no, about what he's talking about. So that is a very, very important point. Gonna keep mentioning that again and again throughout this whole workshop. The second point now is when we start with an observation, tawag natin dyan stimuli. So what triggers something, no? So for example, I could see a dog, and how I relate to the dog, there will be feelings, no? For example, I'm a very much a dog lover. So when I see a dog, immediately there's like feelings of happiness, feelings of joy that come into me. And feelings is an important part of this framework because as we try to express ourselves to another person, it's important for us to know what exactly we're experiencing in this moment. Kasi kung gagamitin lang natin yung mga salitang, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm feeling bad. Marami ding maraming ding other variations of what we're really feeling, no? So from what could be sad could actually be I'm feeling hopeless. From what could be I'm feeling happy could be, oh, I'm feeling encouraged. And as I'm sure what to the people that have attended several workshops before here in PW, or if it's your first time, emotions, once we're able to label what we're experiencing or what we're feeling, it helps us better understand and manage these different emotions. And one very important part here that's shared in nonviolent communication is that they actually don't label it as good or bad emotions. They just label it as an emotion that you are experiencing. The reason why they do that is they don't want to put judgments towards what you should be feeling or what you shouldn't be feeling. And just to understand that, okay, we're just feeling something. And at the end of the day, as put here in the slides, emotions are a data point for us to that we can acknowledge and learn from. Once again, I do want to acknowledge everyone that has grown up here, maybe by certain parenting or certain by society, no, that programs us to feel that okay, I should only feel happy. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't be sad. Dapat happy lang. These are things that we grew up with and became inherent to us. And because of that, we deny ourselves from feeling exactly what we're going through. When sometimes, no, it really just makes sense to feel that emotion. For example, if you failed an exam or hindi mo nakuha yung gusto mong promotion, talagang that is something to be sad about. Common reaction of maybe society might be, okay, look at the brighter side. You still have a job. And given that we're recovering from the pandemic, there'll be more opportunities, which is true, and that has a good intent. But at the same time, it does not discount that the sadness is real, and the sadness is trying to do something for us. And here in nonviolent communication, they talk about that each feeling indicates a met or unmet needs. So once again, a feeling is an indication or a sign of a met or unmet need. The reason why I'm emphasizing that is because if emotions are data points, what are we learning from these data points? And in NVC, what we talk about is what we're learning from the data points there are needs that we all have. And that these needs are what we're trying to strive towards and what we're trying to do in our different daily actions that we're trying to do. So the second, once again, part of this framework is knowing what your feelings are. Third naman, as I was sharing to everyone, is needs. So needs are a basic, normal necessity of a human being. So, for example, food is a basic need. Stability, a sense of stability, a sense of connection, feeling that you are loved and supported by another person. Pag sinabi natin, parang, oh, I'm feeling lonely. Lonely, if we understand, okay, lonely, baka data point to. Baka may sinasabi itong lonely na to. It will point us towards, okay, if I'm feeling lonely, meaning there is a connection that I want with another person that I'm not getting in this moment. And when we can move from judgment of what we're feeling towards this compassionate understanding that we're feeling something and it's pointing us towards what our human needs, our basic human needs, then we can be more compassionate about ourselves and we can also be compassionate to other people. Because the beautiful thing is if we have needs, meaning other people also have needs. And if we all have needs and these are something that's normal, it means that it's not a sense of who's right or who's wrong, but how can we compromise and understand one another so that we can work towards a way that we can both benefit. And as mentioned here also, needs correspond with actual feelings. So just to emphasize the example in front, if the need is a need for connection, if it's unmet, okay, one possible emotion might be, okay, I'm feeling lonely in this moment. But if the need is met, let's say I get to go out with my family and I have a good dinner with them, no, tas nagkwentuhan pa kami, then I would be able to feel, okay, I can say I feel loved because my need for connection was fulfilled. So that is the need part. So once again, you start with what is the observation, what's the trigger, stating what are you feeling because of the trigger, and then stating what is the need behind that feeling. And then last but not the least is request. So kung alam na natin kung ano yung pangangailangan natin, it becomes clear for us to know what action we get to do, or how we would like the person that we're communicating with to help us out. So for example, if as mentioned, no, if the feeling, sabihin na lang natin, the feeling is I feel lonely. The need here is, okay, I have a need for connection or that quality time with another person. And if that's clear to us, okay, kaya pala naging malungkot ako because I have a need for connection that isn't met. Then it's clear for us to go like, okay, sige, let me look through my friends list and let me invite someone that I can invite. So let me invite a friend for coffee. Let me have a video call with a loved one I haven't spoken to in months. And then this is a proactive way for us to get that connection that we're looking for. So a request is a concrete action that can be satisfied voluntarily by another person. And dahil request siya, no, it means it has the possibility of the other person saying no, and okay lang yun sa atin. That's why a request differentiates from a demand. So let's just say that there's a command, no, to wash the dishes or wash the dishes. So when you hear that, there might be a thought around, okay, wala akong choice dito. Kailangan kong hugasan yung pinggan. And what that removes is, as mentioned in communication, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street where we're both equals. If we demand or we enforce another person to do something, we remove them the freedom to be able to say for themselves if that's something they actually want to do or not. So when we make requests, it's very important here in nonviolent communication, it has to be satisfied voluntarily by the other person. Meaning kung nag-oo sila, talagang dahil gusto nila, hindi sa may consequence, no? Or may mangyaring masama sa kanila. So all in all, that is the whole NVC framework called OFNR, which is observations, feeling, needs, and requests. So the 5 principles in NVC naman, and it's important to talk about this because this helps us understand or set the ground rules of how we can communicate to another person. And number one for this one is everyone's needs matter. Meaning, contrary to what we believe, no, what we're taught growing up, where okay, kung tama si kuya, mali ako. In NVC, it tries to see the perspective of may pangangailangan si kuya at may pangangailangan din ako. And that's okay. Second is that we share the same needs. Meaning that whatever you're experiencing, you're not alone. And you're human for experiencing what you're experiencing. But at the same time, whatever the other person's experiencing is probably human also. And what I find so beautiful in that is, for example, if someone would cut you off the road, how might you respond, no? So baka magalit ka, tas may masabi kang masamang words or yung this person's lazy, this person ang irresponsible niya, ang pangit-pangit ng kotse niya, etc., etc. So different judgments. But at the end of the day, no, if we see it from this perspective of everyone, we share the same needs, maybe in that moment, your need for safety was not met dahil may pagka-reckless din yung ibang driver, yung driver na yun. But if we try to understand it from the perspective of NVC, maybe we'll see that, okay, maybe I'm giving a judgment around that this person's selfish, this person is a horrible driver. And maybe I can understand that what if they also have needs? What if, for example, hindi na natin alam na baka pala may na-aksidente yung anak ng driver, and then the driver is trying to bring his child to the hospital. And these are things we don't know, right? But when we understand that valid yung pangailangan ko ng safety at valid din yung pangailangan niya na for that family or that safety for his child, then maybe we can understand a little bit more compassionately that we're both equals and no one's really here at fault. Third is very important, which is every action we take is an attempt to fulfill our needs. Meaning, when we see an action, for example, someone's cutting us on the road, meaning there's a need that they're trying to fulfill. Either gusto nila ng efficiency, or there is a need for achievement. Baka naman race car driver to. Hindi natin alam, di ba? And when we understand it from that light, it helps us become more compassionate that there's another person, there's another human being in front of us trying to live their lives. Fourth is we all connect at the level of needs, meaning when we can understand that we're a human being standing in front of another human being, may pangailangan ako, may pangailangan yung tao na to, then that's where we can go like, okay, you need safety, I need safety. But where the conflict arises is the level of strategies. Sana ba yung sinasabi nating strategies? Halimbawa lang, kung gamitin natin yung topic na war, no? So a country might have a need for both different countries have a need for safety. But the way that they go about getting that safety might be a different issue altogether. So sabihin na natin na, okay, I feel threatened, so I have a need for safety. So my strategy is, okay, let me attack your country. And because that becomes a strategy, and that doesn't take into account what might be the needs of the other country, that's when disagreement, conflict, tension arises. So just to repeat all that again, everyone's needs matter. We share the same needs. Every action we take is an attempt to fulfill our needs. We all connect at the level of needs. And last but not least, conflict arises at the level of strategies, or ano yung action na gagawin natin pagkatapos ng need na to. And now that that's very much clear to us, no, around what is the what of it all. And alam ko na sobrang mabilis lang yung overview ko of nonviolent communication. How can we practice communicating then from a desire to connect? So as mentioned, this is our framework: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. And when we get to combine all this together to express what you want to convey to another person, this puts it in a way that, number one, mawawala yung judgment. So mawawala yung possibility na magiging defensive yung ibang tao, yung isang tao na yun. Number two is we're stating, what we're feeling. So we're becoming more clear around what is this experience for us, loneliness or whatnot. And from that, it leads us towards what need what we might have, or what is that what is the hole that we're trying to fill here, so that when we talk to other person, klaro din sa atin kung ano yung gusto nating sabihin sa tao na to, or what we want to request from this person. Because at the end of the day, to communicate with connection means that, number one, dapat klarong-klaro talaga sa'yo kung ano yung intention mo. It cannot be just okay, I'm angry, let me go to this person. Tendency is, and this happens often, that we have conversations where emotional na tayo, pero hindi naman klaro sa atin kung ba't emotional ba tayo. So when we talk to this person, hindi klaro rin sa kinakausap natin kung ano yung rason din kung ba't nagalit tayo. So to know what we're feeling and what our needs are before we interact with this person allows us to know that I'm coming from a human place, valid yung gusto kong sabihin, o valid din yung gusto kong mangyari, and to also see that as we communicate to this person, may feelings din and may needs din yung tao na to. And that's something important, as mentioned in communication. It's a two-way street. Second, to communicate with connection, meaning there has to be an openness to any outcome. Alam ko sobrang parang saint levels na to na to be open to anything happening, you know. And I have to admit, even as someone that's been practicing NVC for years, sobrang mahirap to. Because obviously, when we know what we need, klaro din sa atin kung ano yung gusto nating mangyari. Pero yung tanong talaga dito ay, ano ba yung magiging response natin kung hindi mangyayari kung ano yung gusto nating mangyari sana. And the reason why it's communicate with connection in relation to this openness is that maybe there's something that we don't see yet in this picture that we only understand from talking to another person. And last but not least is, as mentioned, is to separate observations from judgment. Because if we can't do this from the very get-go, magiging defensive or magiging closed off na yung tao sa kung ano yung gusto nating sabihin sana. So, in the last few minutes that we have together, I will just take the opportunity for us to do a quick exercise on feelings and needs. So, what I want people to do is, I want you to think about an emotional moment in your life, no? So, could be from years ago, could be recent lang. And di naman kailangan, no, na pag sinabi nating emotional moment, na ito yung big life-changing moments. Pwede din parang kanina, parang nahulog ka. Nainis ka sa sarili mo. Any moment that you felt an emotion, essentially. And I want you to state, what feelings did you feel during that period or during that moment? So the Mentimeter, once again, is in front. And while you can base it off the chat, no? So while people are signing into the Mentimeter, I'll just give an example, no? So this is what is called the mood meter. So maybe you've experienced or you've witnessed the emotion wheel. So that's a very popular tool. This is a tool that I prefer, called the mood meter, because it shows us, no, sa baba, nakita natin yung pleasantness of the emotion, kung uncomfortable or comfortable ba yung emotion na to, and the intensity level also, meaning how strongly do we feel this emotion. So it serves as a very good guide to what we're possibly feeling. So right now, Gabby, if we can share the Mentimeter. Thank you so much. So I want to see the different answers. Okay, feeling frustrated and hurt. Felt undervalued and dejected. Okay, stressed out. Powerless. Very, very, very specific, no? A sense of yearning for something. Ashamed, lonely. And I think that's a very strong word, no, that's used and that's very popular in our culture, no, hiya, or that sense of shame. And um the thing with shame, according to the work of Brene Brown, one of my favorite psychologists, is that when we talk about shame, umaabot sa punto ng identity natin, no? That I'm feeling shameful because of who I am, not just because of what you did. Okay, so even this though, for whoever wrote here the heavy emotion and heartbreak, I I invite you, no, that heaviness. Ano kaya yung heaviness na yun? Maybe using a chart. Is that heaviness sadness? Is that heaviness hopelessness? Is that heaviness maybe acceptance? Okay, so also I want to also acknowledge the Zoom chat. Ferdinand was saying, no, loneliness because of losing a loved one. So thank you, Ferdinand, for your vulnerability. So okay, so I want you guys to remember these emotions, and we're gonna go into the next part of this activity, which is a lot of webinars and a lot of trainings will tell you about, okay, feel your feelings, name your feelings. But the next step or next invitation to take it a little bit further now is in the teachings and followings of nonviolent communication. What might be the need that you felt there, no? That the need that you were wanting in that moment. And maybe this might be kung nahihirapan na tayo sa emotions, no? Mas lalong mahihirapan tayo sa naming of what needs we might have. So while you guys are typing out answers in the Mentimeter, I'll show you a list of needs. So these list of needs are from nonviolent communication. So ito yung naging categories ni Marshall Rosenberg. He said that there are generally 7 or 8 needs, main major themes of needs, no? One being of connection, and under that is a need for acceptance, a need for affection, a need for appreciation. Second is there's a seven, tama. Second is physical well-being, so sustenance, food, pagkain, ganun, rest, sleep, peace, play, honesty, meaning, and autonomy. So once again, the question is, given the feelings that you felt from that emotional moment, ano kaya yung pangangailangan na nasa likod ng emotion na yun? So okay, so I think someone put here in the Zoom chat, no, someone I can hug. For me, that might be okay. Might be there's a need for parang for physical touch, or a need for understanding, no? Kaya din yun yung paramdaman galing sa hug na yun. A need for companionship, a need for support, assurance. Assurance is definitely a big one here. Need for pag sinabi natin, no, salary increase or promotion, hindi yun need. Maybe if we can choose a different word, if we can rephrase that, maybe that might be like, okay, a need for stability or a need for security, no? So it's not necessarily the promotion or the salary, that's the request or the action to get the need, but the need in itself is something different. Security or stability. Okay, so let me just look for anything that's different. The need for equality, no? So very similar yun, I guess, for the need for respect, the need for like being seen as a recognition as someone as an equal, the need for growth. They're very, very important din yun. Here's another one, no? A good talk with a partner. So yung good talk na yun, strategy or action yun. Pero sa likod ng strategy and action na yun, there might be a different need. So that need is a need for connection, a need for communication, a need for understanding, a need for a hug. All right. So at the end of it all, once again, we go back to the OFNR framework, where when we try to express ourselves to other people, take note, no, kung talaga bang yung sinasabi natin, observations ba yun or judgments? Because judgments, once again, leads to a place of other people being closed off to what we're saying. And second is, while we communicate to other people, klaro ba talaga kung ano yung nararamdaman natin? And klaro ba talaga kung ano yung pangangailangan natin? Kasi kung hindi, mas lalong o posible, no, na hindi magiging maganda yung resulta ng conversation natin. And last but not least, given it's to really communicate with connection, meaning is to understand that everything that we're expressing in the moment, our observations, our feelings, our needs, the other person that you're talking to as well has those feelings and has those needs. So how can we approach it with that same level of openness that let me hear what this person's also having to say? And to end today's session, I just want to go back to the intent of what Marshall Rosenberg was saying, which is with every choice you make, be conscious of what need it serves. Meaning, I think the first thing I like here is choice, meaning that in every moment, because in spite of what we're feeling, we have an option to choose how we respond. And in the response that we do, the invitation now, no, to be aware what need is trying to be met in this moment. And it's from knowing that you have choice and being aware of what you're feeling and needing that true connection can really happen for yourself and for another person. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for listening to today's workshop. I just want to open it up now, maybe for and pass it back to Gabby and Joyce to introduce how we might approach the questions and answers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chewy. That was a really good discussion. I think ang daming nakarelate. Natawa ako kasi parang it's the observation and the judgment is really something we all have in common. We usually interchange them. Kaya it really takes practice or intentionality to differentiate between the two. Actually, baka you can answer this question by Hafiza in the Zoom chat na judgment ba daw yung hindi mo nagugustuhan yung attitude ng isang tao?
Judgment, so multiple ways to look at this, no? So and normal naman talaga yun, di ba? Na may mga tao talaga na hindi natin magustuhan. It's a judgment to say that this person has a bad personality, or this person selfish. So may interpretation na tayo. So to not like a person, maybe that's more of a feeling in relation to something that they did or something you're observing. A judgment might be more of what do you say in response to not liking this person, no? So the fact that there is a interpretation or a subjective answer to this, meaning it is a judgment.
Yeah.
And sorry, just to emphasize, no, in NVC, we're not trying to say that masama yung judgments, never do judgments. Another big part about NVC is know when you're making a judgment. And kung talagang so you come from a place of intentionality or trueness, and not necessarily subjective.
Yeah. Tama. Tapos Joed said na in my experience, there will always be judgments. The greater challenge for me is what to do with those judgments.
Saan yun? I like to read that. Yun! Okay. Joed. So very, in the words din, no, of Joed. So Marshall Rosenberg said a very similar thing, which is when we really think about communication, and when we really think about interacting with another person, we never have to be concerned about what another person will do, because that's not in our control. What we have to be concerned about is how do we respond to this person. So how does this, even if this person's screaming at you or cursing at you, at the end of the day, you always have a choice na kung ano yung magiging response mo sa moment na yun. Kaya yung mas kailangan nating magbigay ng abala ay sa kung ano yung magiging response natin. Thank you, Joed. Love that.
Yeah, tapos jumping off on that conversation lang, Chewy, di ba parang sabi nga ni Viktor Frankl, it's when you give that space between the stimulus and the response, doon mo malalaman kung ano ba talaga yung appropriate response in a given situation.
Right,
Ayan, I think you can keep your questions coming in. Joyce will be sharing to you the link on the Pigeonhole that we are using, or for those of you who are holding their phones, you can quickly scan the QR code you can see on the screen right now, or you can open a new tab, type in pigeonhole.at, and then type the passcode connect so that we can continue our conversation. Ayan, Chewy, meron agad. May question tayo agad. So we can answer this while we're waiting for other questions to come in. So a lot of relationships, may it be platonic or romantic, are built virtually nowadays, given the pandemic situation. How do we practice nonviolent communication in this online setting?
Right. So the idea, once again, of nonviolent communication is to be able to know what you're feeling, what you like to express, and to express it in a manner that is non-judgmental, is most open also to the other person's response. At the end of the day, it's a courageous way to approach it, no? So if we relate that to the online setup now, sabihin na lang natin na romantic relationship to. What is the need that you're trying to, or what's the intent, no, of what you're trying to, when you try to talk to this person? Is it that that you have a need for connection, a need for quality time, a need for touch, given that you have it's virtual and you want to see each other more? And coming from that, how do you express, what does the lack of this need make you feel? So the person also understands, okay, may impact talaga to. Imbis na gagamitin lang natin yung kasanayan natin, which is around like blaming, no? Na parang, you never make time for me. You're puro Valorant ka lang. So these are ways that we have judgments towards them, diba? And immediately this puts a person defensive. It doesn't help them understand what you really want out of it, which is at the end of the day is yun nga, the connection, the quality time, the touch. So to answer this question in short is know what your intent is, know what need needs to be fulfilled, and how does that impact you? What does it make you feel? And let your partner know this without blame, without judgment, and stating it so that your partner can contribute to you. So thank you to Anonymous One.
Yeah, that's actually a good question, no? Tsaka I think may factor din na kasi alam natin na instant yung message. So it's just easy for us to reply without even thinking about those things. So it also takes a lot of intentionality to stop typing, wag po tayo maging keyboard warriors, and to, yun nga, reflect on the things that Chewy mentioned.
Right. I want to answer the first question. I think very, very important, you know.
So
if we just chunk that up higher, no, how do we communicate with people that have different political preferences?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you know, what I mentioned is that with each political stance, there are different strategies about how they go about gaining their objective, no? Meaning, if there's a even though we're having even though there's different strategies, at the end of the day, as mentioned in nonviolent communication, we connect at the level of needs. Meaning, I don't necessarily know what you mean by addressing, if addressing means fulfilling or if it means to remove the conflict. But maybe the invitation here is to begin with trying to understand, what is this other party trying to do? What is the need that they have? Maybe it's a need for stability, no? That they want a stability for their future families, for their for their other co-fellow people with the same preference.
Yeah.
And understanding that okay, they're human also. Because tendency is that it's very polarizing, no? When someone doesn't believe in the same things that we do, tendency is okay, parang this person's bad, bobo yung tao na yun, hindi niya nakita kung ano yung talagang kailangan mangyari. But those are judgments. Those are our stories of what we think are good. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings trying to try to live a life, trying to that have families, trying to support our families, trying to work our jobs. And the area where we don't necessarily see eye to eye is in how we approach fulfilling those needs. So one is understand the needs. Two is listen to the other person. Instead of like put aside judgment first and try to understand as a human being, speak to another human being, not as a person with a different political stance. What are they trying to communicate? What are they feeling? What are they needing as they say that to you? So you can understand where they're coming from and then see if there's a place where you can come in together and collaborate with one another. No. So very, very important question. Thank you to whoever submitted that.
Yes. Really holding judgment and that curiosity, diba? Holding judgment when you are withholding judgment when you're talking with that person and be curious around the need and the intent.
Yeah. I also just want to state no that it's very hard to do. Very hard to do.
Yeah, diba? Even practitioners of nonviolent communication, it's really a daily practice. It's a skill, pero alam natin na when emotions get in the way, yun din yung nagiging practice for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we jump to another question, I also just want to say that it says nonviolent communication is a way to express yourself and listen to the other person, but it's not a strategy to persuade someone. Because if the intent is to persuade, then nonviolent communication is not the framework. Because the persuading means there's an outcome that you want and strict ka sa outcome na yun. Just want to emphasize that also.
Yeah. Truly, I think this is an interesting question. How do we communicate our modern views to our traditional parents or elders? I think this is applicable not only at home, but even in the workplace where different generations are working together right now.
Right. I know we've reached the point where we wanna really like speak our minds and we want to express ourselves for who we are, and that's great. We also have to understand that the older generation comes from a standpoint where they are also kind of expressing their own views and their own needs at the time. So tendency is let me communicate my view versus then the parents let me communicate my view. So it's conflicting views. What NVC or what Marshall would recommend is if a person doesn't seem to want to listen, there's a need, there's a reason for that also. And maybe this is an invitation first to understand where are they coming from, what are they trying to express. And once we're able to empathize more with them and hear where they're coming from, and once they're calmer, then that's the time that we also get using the NVC framework, get to communicate our needs as well, no? So if I were to re-answer this question again, just getting the word communication there, it's really a two-way street, meaning you have to know what's your intent out of that communication. Do you want them to understand? Do you want them to adjust? Do you want them to leave? I don't know. And then at the same time, give space to understanding them as well and what they believe in and what they are trying to express. So
yes, we hope that answered that question kasi I think a lot of people also parang two-way street din. Hindi lang yung mas bata how to communicate to their elders. Pero yung mga learned, wise, and old people, how do they connect with the younger generation as well?
Right. I didn't get to say it there then, but usually, no, when I explore that dynamic and types of conversation, it tends to be the older person has this a need for respect, or sinasabi na natin respect.
Yeah.
And it can be ironic, no, because we're also asking for respect by listen to what we're saying.
Yes.
But maybe in that moment also, mas intense yung need nila, and it reaches a point where they're not listening anymore. So if you have more capacity or patience to listen first, help them meet that need first para maging kalmado na sila. And
Yeah.
then that's the time we can try to meet our need. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Talagang you can parang meet that need first na you understand their point. As in,
Right.
siguro nga just saying na I understand where you're coming from. And imbes na pero ito kasi yung ano, 'di ba? So
Yeah.
like it's the two things can be true at the same time. Hindi ibig sabihin mali kayo pare. True ito naman, I think it's about expressing their needs. What if the person can't voice out their needs to other people? Dahil it's because they're ashamed kung ano yung kailangan nila, ano yung need nila. Or maybe yun nga, baka hindi rin nila alam kung ano yung need nila. How can we explore what we need so that we can
Right.
express them?
It's a very, very good question. And the first thing I want to address now is we really can't control another person in their pace and timing. So if this person's feeling a sense of shame, it's not us to say that they have to share now. But yun nga, but what we can do is we can help them feel like it's a safer space to do so. So if a person does not have the language, around what they're feeling, or the language around what they're needing, it's also very possible for us to engage in conversation where we're clarifying what they're going through. So a lot of NVC is used in conflict mediation. So a lot of it is around the work of NVC practitioners is around talking to the person and asking them, oh, okay, are you I saw that you threw your pen. Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling hurt? And then letting the person clarify and giving them the language now around what they might be feeling. And assuring them that at their own time they can express it. I think that's the most we can do. Yeah. But I also just want to acknowledge that there is for whoever wrote this message, there's also a need for contribution, meaning a desire to help another person, which I think is very much valid also. But once again, understanding then until where is that point of being able to contribute to this person and beyond, and what is stepping over boundaries already. So thank you to whoever shared that.
I love what you said about creating that language kasi baka nga mamaya hindi nila ma-express. Like they feel it, pero they just need help in expressing and putting a label to it.
What I found out very, very interesting is that if I'm not mistaken, I attended a workshop, and then our trainer there was saying that in Marawi, in their local dialect, the way that they express feelings are really just it's the local dialect that translates to good or bad. So they don't have a vocabulary of ashamed, lonely, joy, and all these emotions. It's just good or bad. And that's why I guess the work here is very important, no? That we can try to also contribute to them through helping out them label what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Keep it coming.
Language talaga is really very important. Should we can actually, baka maybe you can expound. I know you already answered something related to this, but how do I communicate with the person who is close-minded and don't want any suggestions?
Right. So if we break it down, no, I think from the get-go, there's already a judgment around, okay, this person's close-minded. So from the get-go, I think it's important to note that, okay, there's a judgment because coming into the conversation, kung closed-minded yung tao na to, immediately we have our guards up, we're feeling emotional. Number two is doesn't want any suggestions. So if the once again, if the intent here is to persuade, if the intent here is to get an idea across, then maybe NVC isn't necessarily the best route for you. But if you were to try to use NVC in this way, it would be really to understand, no, what makes this person firm in their ideology, what makes this person firm in their behavior, or what's making them not want to accept suggestions. For example, when we talk about older generation, medyo may kasanayan na sila eh. Like, they know what works for them. So, that for them, that's fulfilling a need for, let's just say, a need for choice. That's their option. That's their preferred choice. So, if we can understand that, then we can try to look for different ways to contribute to their need, or we can just understand that that's where they're coming from and accept that that's something we can't necessarily change about them. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. I think it does, Chewy. And yun nga, maybe we can try other communication techniques when we're trying to persuade or like we're trying to get our point across. So maybe we can do 2 more questions. So ito, for someone like me who's very short-tempered, please give me advice on how to manage my anger issues, most especially when dealing with my husband and 8-year-old kid.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it takes a lot of, once again, bravery to openly source suggestions for something you're going through, you know. First thing, I think it's, if you were to try to break it down using the framework of NVC, it's understanding first, no, what are the things that cause those triggers. So if we see that the feeling is anger, what is the stimuli that contributes to the anger? So it could be, let's say that for the husband, no, he doesn't wash his own plate, or sabihin natin na ang what are other complaints? He goes home too late. So I know he goes home late. So look for what are those stimuli, no, or what are the things that causes that trigger the anger. Because the moment that it's clear to you and what these triggers are, the easier it is for you to also prepare yourself, no. And number two is to understand when you see the triggers, what story or what judgments are you making? So for example, it's like, okay, my husband comes home at 10 p.m. and doesn't tell me where he is. Maybe there's a story around there, like he doesn't love me because he doesn't inform me of where he is. Or there's a story around, if he were responsible, he would tell me what time he's coming home every day. So when you can understand that, okay, that judgment actually comes from your own need of maybe a need for clarity.
Yeah.
Or a need for connection, that will allow you to be able to, number one, empathize with your own emotion of feeling angry, and number two, also understand and also offer that to your husband so that he has the opportunity to help you out with your need for connection. Once again, the anger here is valid. It's about understanding where it comes from and what can we do with it. So I hope that helps.
Yes, I love what you said na be curious around the emotion. Valid yung na-feel niyang anger, but be curious why that comes up for you every time these things, maybe experiences happen. So
Yeah.
it's not entirely, hindi siya mali, pero like seeing ano ba yung story behind that would help you identify what the root cause is. And that would help you express your need to the people involved.
Right.
for this instance, yung husband niya and yung anak niya. So Chewy, you can choose one last question.
Okay, the top left one. I think
The four votes.
yeah.
With four votes. Okay.
Because I think it will help.
Yeah, go ahead.
What if you were hurt by a person you never thought they would have done that? After that, you distance yourself from them in a snap. Is that violent communication? The reason why I chose this is I want to differentiate violent from non-violent communication. What Marshall Rosenberg is talking about when he says, what he defines as violent communication is kung hindi klaro sa atin kung ano yung pangangailangan natin. So if we're not clear on what our needs are, if we're not if our actions are not connected to a clarity around what we're needing, that's violent because we're just recklessly stating what we're feeling. We're throwing out judgments. But non-violent communication is having that clarity around what we're feeling and what we're needing in the moment and communicating from that place and offering it to the person as a choice. Hence why it's called violent versus non-violent. Essentially, it's like knowing or not knowing what your needs are and acting from that place. So to answer this question, after that, you distance yourself in a snap. I think not necessarily to put a judgment towards it is or is not a violent communication, but I guess an invitation. I'm not sure what type of answer do they want from this. Like, yes, violent yan, or hindi violent yun. But I think the invitation, at least for me, is to think about what you're needing, right? So maybe it's your need you need for security, you need for space, safety from this person. Maybe there's also a need for understanding on ba't ginawa niya yung action na yun. And then when you try to converse with this person later on, let it come from that place, no, of knowing that I have a need for understanding. Then ask the person, ba't mo ginawa yung action na to? Yeah.
Yeah. Ano din no? Parang when you give yourself the space, yun nga, we have this innate need to feel safe at the moment. So if you are parang putting that distance so that you can regain paano ba, your thinking brain, yun yung pumapasok sa isip ko.
Yes.
Ito diba, when you're in a state of threat, wala, fight or flight lang talaga. So you have to remove yourself from that situation so that you can think more clearly. And if in that thinking clearly, you are able to identify that need and then approach the person afterwards to communicate siguro what transpired. Diba? I don't think it's about labeling it as violent or non-violent communication. Pero kung yung tanong mo is it okay to distance yourself at the moment? Parang, yes, it's an invitation for you if it will help you regain control over your emotions, regain control of your thinking. I guess that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love what Gabby was saying. Yeah, it is an and that distancing yourself is fine because that comes from a place of what you need at that moment. No, it's about how you respond afterwards with this person that matters.
Yes. Grabe no, parang dati ang communication pag tinuro sa atin, si sender, si receiver, and si message. But what we fail to realize is ang dami palang underlying elements na we also have to be mindful of whenever we communicate with others. And thank you, Chewy, for sharing with us your knowledge about nonviolent communication. Is there anything else you'd like to share as last words to our audience as we close this?
If you can find the audiobook or PDF, I really recommend. We're trying to spread more nonviolent communication in the Philippines. I think especially as a country, no, that very sensitive tayo, pero hindi nating wala tayong space, or we don't talk about what we're going through with one another. So I think this is a really a good invitation for people to learn how to communicate with one another about these topics. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Chewy. A lot of our learners this afternoon are also sending their thanks in the chat box.
Can I
And
also just show maybe if ever they're interested? Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to share with everyone, in case that you like this content or you're curious more about coaching or nonviolent communication, you can also follow us in different social media. So it's What Really Matters in Instagram and Facebook. We also have a website. And you can also email us. If you have any questions, further questions about NBC, I'd love to help out. No? So thank you once again, Gabby and Joyce, for the
Yes, thank you
opportunity.
also, Chewy. And of course, sabi nga natin, we are going to talk about more topics about toxic positivity in the workplace this March. So we hope that you get to join us in the following days. Kaya if you also pala enjoyed our session today on communication, I'd like to throw in this question. Marami ba kayong natutunan about communication today? Can you type in yes in the chat box kung madami? Ayan. Feeling ko yung dami ng S, equivalent yun dun sa dami ng natutunan din nila this afternoon. Ayan. So one of the reasons why we wanted to tackle communication is because we know na isa sa mga nagiging stressors in organizations is communication. Like, how do you communicate with your colleagues? How do you communicate with your bosses, diba? How do you communicate with clients? And that's why one of the things we did in Positive Workplaces is we formulated the Positive Communication course. So if you enjoyed how we talked about nonviolent communication this afternoon and you want to equip yourselves more with more knowledge and skills on how to become an effective communicator or a positive communicator in your company, we'd like for you to register and enroll in our public course. This is our first public course for 2023, which will happen on April 14, 21, 28, and May 5. Those are all Fridays. So, yung mga magiging facilitator dito is Nikki. If you guys know Nikki Vergara, she's the one of the co-founders of Positive Workplaces. Chewy is also gonna be one of our facilitators for this course, and Joyce and I will also be joining you in those sessions. So if you're interested, you can just scan the QR code so you can register and fill out our enrollment form. So ang rates natin for this course is 6,500 for the regular rate per person. Pero if you pay as early as now, bago matapos yung early bird rate natin, that will only be 5,700 per person. So if you guys need, if you want to request this for your organization as an in-house course, pwede din. So just send us a message on Facebook or reach out to us at learn@positiveworkplaces.org. We'll be happy to assist you on that. Okay, so aside from that, you can follow us on Facebook if you want to know more about the different products that we offer. We also post thought leadership posts like tough or toxic. What is a toxic boss and how can you identify one? O kaya, how do you move on when you just started quitting your job? And have you been hustling this new year? So if you want to know more about tips on leadership, positive psychology, and well-being, follow us on Facebook. Okay, meron din tayong mga short form videos on Filipino leadership, student leadership, and well-being. So follow us on TikTok. Para rin masagot namin yung mga questions nyo, we are gonna post some of the answers over on TikTok. So make sure that you follow us on TikTok. Ang handle namin is Positive Workplaces. And now, yung pinaka-inaantay ng lahat, you can just quickly scan the QR code or just click the link that Joyce will be sending so that you can answer the post-evaluation form in the chat box so that you will claim your e-certificate right after you submit that particular form. Pero remember, yung 10 na sinabi namin kaninang nag-start tayo, please check the title of the form please make sure to encode the correct email address. So be mindful dun sa mga capitalizations nyo, pati yung @gmail.com. And at the same time, be mindful of the name that you will type in because your certificates will be automatically generated. Yan. So do you have any more questions? Or kanina may nakita akong question about the early bird rate. I think the early bird rate is until next week na lang. So as much as possible, send in your enrollment forms and your payments already. Kung kailangan yung i-request yung training budget sa office nyo, you can send us an email at learn@positiveworkplaces.com para we can assist you on what you need to submit. Or if you need a statement of account, para we can also send that over to you. So we're just gonna leave the evaluation form open for 30 minutes. So by around 5 o'clock, we're already going to close the form. Make sure that you answer the form. Click nyo yung submit once you're done answering, and wait for your certificate sa email na nilagay nyo dun sa evaluation form natin. So we're just going to leave the room open for the next 5 minutes. So make sure you scan the QR code, i-copy nyo na yung evaluation form, link that Joyce shared in the chat box. We will be closing the room by 4:40. And see you all next